Welcome everyone to Cape Ann ARTWaves. I'm Kristine Fisher, your host of today's program, coming to you by way of 1623 Studios located in Gloucester, Massachusetts. We start out every show giving a big shout out to our 2021 sponsors. They are Prince Insurance Agency, M.K. Fisher Visual Artist, the McDermott McCarthy team at Gibson Sotheby International Realty, Common Crow, and our partner C-Arts, who do such a terrific job with all of our marketing and promotion, and of course 1623 Studios. A big nod of thanks also to Steve Lacey and Pat Verga for their contribution of the music, and to Jacqueline Genham DeFalco, my partner in crime and fellow co-producer, who will be your host next time. Jackie and I have had the privilege to interview talented art champions, to include artists and gallerists who have contributed richness to the cultural community of Cape Ann. Today, I am thrilled to have a conversation with the highly regarded gallerist, Matthew Swift, of the Matthew Swift Gallery here in Gloucester. Matt has contributed tremendously to the vibrancy of Cape Ann, the greater region of Boston, as well as nationally. Matt founded his gallery in 2013, known as the Trident Gallery, and has been featuring contemporary art largely by living artists, producing exhibitions and engaging events. His current exhibition is titled Still Figuring It Out. Together with his creative partner and wife, Sarah Slifer, they have collaborated to create the live art series of performance art, an important focus of their work together. Matt brings 25 years of interdisciplinary research in the arts, earning his PhD from BU and his undergraduate degree from MIT in math. He was fortunate to grow up in a culturally rich family where art mattered. His family ties lured him to New England from Washington, D.C., and he has been in Massachusetts largely ever since college. Matt knew in his mid-20s that he wanted to dedicate a big part of his life to the arts. And aren't we fortunate? As he says, and I love this quote, "Good art is like a good friend. It always has something to say." Welcome, Matt.
Hi, thank you.
It's great to see you. Why don't we dive right in and talk about your early beginnings and how you got to Gloucester, and then we'll move into talking about your fabulous gallery.
Sure. Well, the opportunity to look back, you see some patterns sometimes that you didn't realize at the time. When you grow up, it seems normal. But I do look at my family and, realize that, art mattered. And as you had said, and my father was a collector, and I didn't know to call him that at the time. His first wife, who's the mother of half siblings who I'm very close to, was the editor of an arts newspaper that covered the region of Maryland, Virginia, Washington, D.C. For years. That was her career. And it just was making things as well as delight in the natural world, which I share as well. In my life. You look back and you see these patterns, and a lot of teachers in my life too, the desire to share that enthusiasm. So I do have family ties in Gloucester. A great grandfather built a house here. He was from Chicago, and various of his descendants have settled here. It was a summer place initially in the 1920 and following. And it's been interesting. I have Southern relatives on the other side of my family, and they have generally just a better sense of place and home, I feel. We move around a lot in the North, but coming here, I could sit with my, then 75, 80-year-old aunt and sit there and say, I was here as a girl. And the telephone company guy who would come to take the mice nests out of the line every April, and then you get the hum out of the phone, would tell me a story about my grandmother. So that's been a nice experience and part of my attachment to this region. I met my future wife here, and that's why I'm here now.
And Matt, we have a beautiful shot of your grandfather's wonderful home, handsome home, that was featured in Architectural Record.
This house, I've only seen the photos because I've heard the phrase, if you live near the water, sometimes you're going to live in it. And he built his house. There's some story about somebody telling him, "Oh, you better not build your house here." And he walked 100 feet closer to the ocean and said, "We're going to build here." And so it didn't last past the 1970s. But I do have some of the furniture from that house, a various family have, and some of it's in the gallery here to share with the public.
So do you want to focus a little bit on your education and really how that informed you to be doing the work that you're doing?
Sure. And there was another pattern I found there too, and that I didn't seek out the usual path. And my favorite subjects in high school were math, and my favorite and best were math and English. And so that duality was there from the beginning. And I'd heard of MIT, and I thought it was a pretty cool sounding place and an intense place, and not the usual college that other people were thinking about. So I knew I could focus on math for a while, and so I did that. I went there, and well, I did the math, but mainly I was doing then plays and writing, and so learned. There were a couple of great mentors there. And so when I moved out of that, I went to a writing program in Roanoke, Virginia at Hollins College, now Hollins University. And that year was, I almost knew it at the time, was really a defining, wonderful year for me as moving into some idea of who I was creatively, who I was intellectually, who I was as a person, all of the above. And down in the South, and most of the students and faculty were more Southern oriented than Virginia. They don't boast about staying up all night and finishing this or that, but they do tell you in the morning that they finished 4 chapters since you last talked to them. So they had its own kind of intensity there.
Well, it sounds like a marvelous experience that was very informative for you.
And I moved on. I wasn't, again, interested in the sort of standard graduate school. I wanted to go on in English. English and creative writing is what I did at Hollins. And there was this fascinating interdisciplinary graduate school in Boston University at the time, and it's no longer there. It's been sort of rolled into a university-wide honors program, but it was called University Professors. It had a very different model. You got paired with a professor and to do a certain project. And when I got there, I sort of discovered in the first couple of years the whole field of philosophy of science, which seemed to integrate everything that I cared about. So I got very excited about that. And there were some great faculty there at the time. And you had the freedom in this interdisciplinary college at the university to take courses anywhere in any department. I began in philosophy of science. I said I chose the topic of infinity, and it proved a little hard to narrow down. So I traded it for literature and Samuel Beckett. And it was a terrible trade because the world of language is even more infinite. And it was the right choice. I spent 6 years working on Samuel Beckett, and gave myself, or through that process, gained education. All of Western culture you have to be to follow somebody, a genius like that who was very, very well read. And so that was the graduate level there. And so my training is not in art history per se. It's more in literature, but it's really what I gained was a comfort in talking about art and the role of the critic to guide people into art. And that's what I feel like I bring to the gallery, was able to bring to the gallery.
Absolutely. I think this is a great segue. I mean, you do bring to the gallery your words, poetry, theater, and certainly the visual arts. You began the Trident Gallery in 2013, and you wanted to create a gallery experience that gave the art the attention it deserved. And when we talked earlier, you said to me you were surprised by what a galvanizing effect it had on the artists.
That was one thing I didn't.
Let's start to talk about your gallery.
Yeah, it was one. I did a lot of planning. I had from February through September when the whole gallery was under construction, and I think we have a photo of that.
We have a great shot of that. Yeah, we'll show
and,
that right now.
That was part of building a space, and one of the things that I'd done, I did a big remodel on a condominium I was living in during the school. So making a space where art could be experienced was part of the whole process, especially at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And that interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, that both terms are out there, mm-hmm. is where I'm coming from and what I'm looking for in there's not a monopoly on good art or serious art. Mm-hmm. And so I try to talk about the kind of art that I care about. And I want art to be not just visually exciting and interesting. It needs to involve everything, because art can, at the level that I've came to appreciate, involve mm-hmm. the body, the mind, the spirit, all of those things. And things can be wonderful just involving one or two, but we also embraced and this was a wonderful project to do with my partner, wife, and with the artists that I was working with. We really engaged in a lot of performance in those first years.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we've got a great shot of Sarah's work. Then It Seemed Beautiful.
And that is a line from Frank O'Hara, the poet, mm-hmm. and it's sung by Joan LaBarbera, and it was a Morton Feldman piece of music. Mm-hmm. And then Sarah made a dance piece to an excerpt from that. And, that's of the most, some of those performances which did involve different fields of expertise and it all in response to the art were, some of the best memories of that phase. And, there, even the piece of music involved poetry and song and movement, and at other times we were involving visuals and writers and movement, all mm-hmm. in the community, and participating not in that first one. Then It Seemed Beautiful, but so that was a great era, and we had some great collaborations that we did with other organizations in the community. Mass Audubon, it's a organization I think is terrific, and have done a lot of citizen science mm-hmm. In the years before the gallery, bird observations and mainly. Mm-hmm. And so it was terrific to be able to cooperate with the Massachusetts Audubon, the Museum of American Bird Art at Mass Audubon, and then we got to know the people at Ocean Alliance out on Rocky Neck, who were an ocean conservation group.
Yes, and I went to that installation, and I have to say, both my husband, Rick Pringle, and I were so impressed. You and Sarah just did a phenomenal job. And we have an image here, Matt. I'd love for you to talk to it. The deep sea has stars.
And that was I think that was the first installation we did there, and the most ambitious. And we had a lighting designer who was a new friend in town, and Sarah brought together a great array of performers for a benefit on one of the nights of the weekend. And during Schooner Fest, when so many people want to come down to that location in the middle of the harbor, and mm-hmm. the weather was perfect that year. Mm-hmm. And I spent a whole week installing art in this industrial place with a big hammer drill. And it really was an exciting experience to try and choose the art with related to the ocean conservation and to this building. And now they've not just decontaminated the new building, which was the occasion of that show. They've really moved forward And one day we're going to collaborate again. We've both been too busy with our core business.
Right,
but
right. It was very memorable. And we're also going to float a shot of your Harbour Town installation as well. I would like to make a segue and talk more about your exhibitions.
Sure.
And you made a comment that also resonated with me when we spoke earlier, that you are attracted to artists who have something new to say all the time.
Well,
that resonated with me. Do you want to expand on that, and then we'll
sure.
have some visuals?
I think there's so many ways to run a gallery. There's so many ways to be an artist and be a creative person, and there are people, and this we'll get to the national fairs later, but one of the things about there is you really understand who you are and what you stand for when you start to travel a little bit, even outside your region. And you just see a lot of, there are artists who wrestle with the muse anew with each piece or each series. And in that sense, they're always on the move. They're always incorporating new influences, new ideas about the world as we age and as the world changes. And I think artists who stop at a certain point, they find success and then repeat, have become craftsmen. And it doesn't mean they're not artists. And, I don't deny that term to anybody, but I'm interested in that art that's going to move and develop over a whole career as well. And not just stop with something that satisfies at the moment.
Right. I love how you summarize that. Let's kind of dig into one of your exhibitions, Political Body. We have 2 images that I'm going to show. Walk us through that, Matt. I think that was, a proud moment for you from a curatorial standpoint.
I look back and, you have your Hall of Fame of, invitation designs, and you have, just like, no, I'm really happy with this. And other times, you do what you need to do. And so I do mostly solo shows, have done mostly solo shows in this history here. And then occasionally I say when I had a good idea, I didn't ever want to plan to do it. But there's a point where you bring enough material together, you have an idea, and if I have this and I have this, and suddenly there's a critical mass, I can do this. I know I can fill in the rest. And so the Political Body, it's a nice transition from that period of a lot of performative work. Instead of putting together performance to respond to the art, just how we've done it before, and there were memorable ones there. An exhibition that was up and a performance that was part of it during the 2016 election, which didn't go how anybody expected, but that was it suddenly in the middle of the exhibition became something else, which is wonderful. And that's part of that art as a friend idea, is that the world is going to change, and good art is going to have something to say as circumstances changes. I've thought of that a lot in the pandemic, and been really proud of the artists and the choices I made and the art I have, because things started to mean something different and that we never expected, but it has that depth. So the Political Body was an idea that was organized, an art exhibition in response to some performances of some New York associates of Sarah, my wife's, who she wanted to bring them up for a performance. And these are big time New York performing artists, and who she happened to be in a dance company with, years ago, and still kept up with. And I said, well, we can do art that also addresses the body. And I started to put that together. And it's just one of those things. You have a good idea and you hope that it comes together well, and then sometimes it comes together and is as good as you imagined it. And that's how I felt about that one in particular.
That's it doesn't always happen, as you said earlier, it doesn't always happen.
Yes, you do your best, and sometimes you hit a home run, and sometimes you strike out.
Right, right. Well, what I'd like to do now is to talk a bit about your exposure with your national fairs, because you have really stepped out and represented your gallery and various artists at some very, key, visible, important national fairs. Talk to us a bit about that. And we have
And as we go through the gallery, there was a point where I realized I was very excited about Cape Ann and the history here, and I still am. And yet I have a different perspective on it. And I was part of the docent program, the training program at the Cape Ann Museum in the year leading up to the gallery, and I sort of had to put that down. It was a 2-year program as I began the gallery and became to be busy with that. We have a wonderful modernist tradition here, and yet it's not as well known as the impressionist tradition, which is to the fore today in the practicing artists of today. And I came to realize that Cape Ann context that I was excited about wasn't a really helpful way to understand the art that I was showing, even though it does belong with that tradition and we can all be excited about it. So I distanced myself a little bit, sort of as far as talking about the art and not finding it helpful in any sense to draw those. And so that tied with it was coming at the same time as starting to go to shows in Boston and then more nationally. And after 6 years and renewing the lease here, it was time to change the name of the gallery to help recognition of 90+% of galleries that are run this way with a director and choices and solo shows and are named after their founder. And it just helps people recognize what kind of gallery you are. Every gallery has the same website. And you see that way that it's organized and you say, okay, now I understand what this is.
Right,
and
you're connecting the dots at that point.
I think we have a shot of the new sign out front.
Yes, we have a fabulous shot of your gallery from the street.
And so yeah, and I mentioned before, I went and visited a fair in Florida, and to compare it to my Boston experiences, which is a little more regional and smaller fairs, and I felt, no, I can do this, and I should do this. And so I think we have the fairs are really, I think we have a couple of images of that. The first one was down in Miami in 2018. And, I really was able to bring, and very happy to be able to bring some artists who deserve that and national attention and really could rub shoulders with anything at the fair.
Well, I tell you, your booth looked absolutely amazing. I've been to several of those national shows. I was very impressed by your booth. It's so spacious and really shows a lot of depth there. Matt, I'd love to do a segue into talking about the Matthew Swift Gallery now and really what's on your agenda for the upcoming months. We're kind of stumbling out of a pandemic, kind of, sort of.
Yes. And,
you have an amazing annex space with, I believe, over 700 works of art. Let's talk about.
I call it the Annex facility, and I've always needed a little bit of offsite storage to keep the gallery clean. One needs a lot of materials and so on to do a gallery artist coming and going. And I've always worked long-term with artists, and like I say, there's so many ways to run a gallery, but I value the long-term relationships. It comes from my academic background of really wanting to immerse myself and get to know over a long period of time, because it needs a long period of time to really understand where somebody's coming from. Not that the art is inaccessible, but to feel like you really grasp what an artist's concerns are. It just takes time. And so the Annex, now I found this great place eventually near the gallery where I can stop by every day, and I store hundreds of pieces there. And it really, because I had to learn art handling, and I can ship and receive there, so to speak. There was one moment where a collector wanted to see several large pieces, and for a while I was bringing them to the gallery. And I was like, I can't bring 5 large pieces over here. I need to be using this space over there as a private showroom. And I was working on this for years, and then the pandemic made it all the more important to have that private showroom and this other facility. So I know we have a couple of photos there, including, I think, a mashup of or a collage of shots of an artist studio. Peter Lines' studio, I think, is there. And I'm drawing an analogy, not of the creativity involved, but really fine art is this amazing production line of individuals who have dedicated their lives to mastering dozens or hundreds of materials and supplies and how to use them and expertise with them. You know, a carpenter could be this in the same category. And then there's a whole nother segment that maybe people don't see. I call it the kitchen of the gallery, where art is coming from the studio and being prepared for display, and framers are involved. And so we're not just sitting here with classical music playing and reading an art book at the back of the gallery.
Right. I love these shots. Yeah, it's like pulling back the curtain on, you know, what it really takes to produce a show. And I love the idea to bring some of your major collectors to your annex. I think that is terrific.
And I think I may have some regular, you know, not events there, but that's where the gallery's going. Coming is the I spent a lot of time working on the facility in improvements. I'm slowly painting it. I'm you know, making it more efficient. And as we come out of the pandemic, that's all the more important. And I chose for this summer a few sort of broad subject categories. We began with still lifes. Right now we're doing the human figure. And I've readjusted it. My website still say August 2nd, but I'm going to continue with the second phase of the human figures through Labor Day.
Oh, that's terrific. I like that. Talk to us a little bit about what's behind you, Matt, because this is part of it.
So this is part of it here. And this space, this is Susan Erin's work. And I wanted to, just like with the still lifes, there's so many things we call a still life. I intentionally wanted to show at least the range within the work that I can show of some of that. And here, this is portraits or even a photograph of one of the Chilean disappeared. And Susan Erin does work with genocide and with historical events like this. And so this is the one on this side. It's a painting almost like a photograph, but it's really meant to be that homage of that time that the artist spent in recreating and recalling and memorializing a person who is gone. And then behind me is some other kind of figurative art, an imagined series of drawings about Charlotte Bronte, called Stoning Charlotte Bronte, because there was an anecdote of a young boy who was in her charge who threw a rock and accidentally hit her on the head. And scholarly article, tongue in cheek, said was called Stoning Charlotte Bronte.
Is that work also done by Susan?
That's Gabriella Barzoni.
Great.
And we have 3 or 4 more artists in the room to the other side. And we'll be making some changes because I have more excellent human figure work to show. And I'll be at a fair in the Hamptons in New York over Labor Day.
Terrific. Good for you. Good for you. And you have Art Miami coming up, don't you?
Art Miami. I'm very happy to participate. I've worked with that organizer before in Palm Beach and in Miami later in the year. But this is the big week for the country, Miami Art Week, and often called Art Basel as an abbreviation, but it's a confusing one because Art Basel is a single fair, as well as this enormous 20+ fairs, and every cultural institution in Miami is doing programming for this first week of December. And so I'm in a very nice fair, the flagship fair of Art Miami, and that's the first week of December. And so those are the 2 fairs that I'll be participating in this year. We're back to in person. They were virtual for about a year.
Right. Well, fantastic. Maybe I'll see you there. Rick and I have gone to that fair several times. So Matt, I want to thank you. What a pleasure to talk to you. I want to thank you for all that you do to lift us all up. Your gallery is so sophisticated and such a fabulous addition to our community, but also on a national level. So I want to thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you for doing what you do for the arts community here, which is so important. And I'm so pleased to be a part of.
That's great. We have a shot that I want to show, which is our closeout shot of you and Sarah and your son. And it was taken for your inaugural
grand opening day. And I was young then. And I don't know how I got through. I know I picked up all the lighting for the gallery 2 days before that opening in Billerica in a rented van. And somehow it got all done. I had a great team working, and we moved a long way from those first days and weeks and months. And sometimes you don't realize it until you see a photo like that. And our son is now taller than us. And I've got a lot more gray.
It's a wonderful shot. Well, I want to thank you again. I also want to thank our sponsors and our partners. And I want to encourage our listeners to check out the 1623 Studios website for the programming of this interview with gallerist Matthew Swift of the Matthew Swift Gallery here in Gloucester, Massachusetts. I'm Kristine Fisher. Until next time.